live on your tablet, phone, and the KUTV app. This is 2 News Live.
Yes, it is. We're right on time. Thanks for joining us on 2 News Live. I'm Brian Schnee. It is Monday, March 18th. We're going in depth tonight on an investigation into the mother of Kouri Richins. Plus, I had the chance to sit down with a former Israel intelligence official about the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. Before we get there, though, if you'd like to weigh in on our conversation, you can always do so by getting in touch with us on all of the social platforms. You could use the hashtag 2NewsLive if you'd like to chime in. Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you get your information, you can find me there. But also you can comment on the live stream, which is streaming live right now on Facebook and also on YouTube. Let's go in depth tonight, shall we? An unsealed search warrant revealed Kouri Richins' mother, Lisa Darden, is being investigated in the 2006 death of her romantic partner. Kouri is the Camas Child Book author accused of killing her husband, Eric Richin. We're talking now about Lisa Darden, who is Kouri's mother. You may remember Eric died from a lethal dose of fentanyl back in May of 2022, and we've done a lot of coverage on this since. Amanda Gilbert is live breaking down why one detective has been looking into Kouri Richins' mother's past. Not what many people have expected here, Amanda.
That's right, Brian. I've got that search warrant in my hand. Basically, Summit County Detective Jeff O'Driscoll was looking at those close to Eric and Kouri Richins. And in that search warrant, he talks about how he discovered that the mom, Lisa Darden, had a partner die back in April of 2006. That partner died suddenly. The search warrant says that death was ruled a drug poisoning overdose of oxycodone. Now, the search warrant goes on to state further down, based off of some information that this detective looked into, the detective wrote in the warrant, quote, based on Lisa Darden's proximity to her partner's suspicious overdose death and her relationship with Kouri, it is possible she was involved in planning and orchestrating Eric's death. Now, I did reach out to Kouri's defense attorney, who said this death was not suspicious, although tragic. So if you'd like to read more details from this search warrant, more from the statement by Kouri's defense attorney, we do have all of that on our news app. Back to you, Brian.
Now, Amanda, I know you were looking into this as how this case from back in 2006 could potentially have some impacts in where we are today with Kouri Richins. What did you find out?
You know, I looked into basically, right now it's just this search warrant. So I did talk to an attorney not connected to this case, and he says it's all going to come down to evidence, whether or not this is going to impact Kouri's trial, whether or not they can link the situation from 2006 to what's happened in more recent years. It's all going to come down to kind of what we learn, what evidence is out there. So at this time, right now, all we have is the facts from the search warrant. Nothing is confirmed. So coming up actually at 6, you're going to hear a little bit from that attorney I spoke to. Back to you, Brian.
Amanda, thank you. As always, we've been covering this case for quite some time. You can find a lot of it on our website, KUTV.com. Let's go in depth now on the conflict unfolding each day in the Middle East. President Joe Biden spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu this morning. It's the first known phone call between the two leaders in more than a month, amid growing tensions over the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The call also comes as Israeli forces launched a new raid on the Gaza Strip's largest hospital today, saying they captured more than 80 Hamas fighters who had regrouped there. Right now, an American ship is on its way to Gaza to set up a pier for distributing more aid to Palestinians. Earlier this afternoon, a former Israeli intelligence official joined me on set to discuss the ongoing tensions in the Middle East and its impacts here in the United States. Joining us in studio, Avi Malamed, former Israeli intelligence official. We're talking about the ongoing war, of course, between Israel and Hamas. And thank you for being here to talk about this and keeping this in the forefront. Really great to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
So where are we right now in the conflict, and where are we looking at how this conflict will really impact the Middle East for years to come?
Okay, starting with Gaza Strip, we are now 6 months also almost into this war. Israel has to a large extent been able to dismantle large parts of Hamas and Islamic Jihad military structure. prior to the war, Hamas used to have something like 24 battalions. As of now, according to the Israeli Defense Forces, it went down to some 4 battalions. We have to be very clear about it, because it doesn't mean that the last person of Hamas is going to be eliminated and the last military capacities, but the whole idea is that from a military perspective, to crush Hamas military spine, and this is the major purpose.
How does this war continue to impact us here in the United States?
Well, as you probably know, there has been some sort of discussion between the American administration and Israel vis-a-vis the whole issue of the objectives of the war. On the one hand, there is a clear understanding that Hamas rule in Gaza Strip must come to an end, and for a good reason, because as long as Hamas is able to continue and dictate its radical agenda, there is no hope for Israelis and Palestinians. So in that regards, there is a very close coordination and understanding between Israel and the United States, and that's significant.
Well, today, for the first time in over a month, President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had a conversation, and I think that was significant because these conversations we're having frequently towards the beginning of this, and now they've kind of spaced out. But what do you make of that relationship between those two?
Well, we all know that there is some differences of opinions between Netanyahu and Biden. There are even some reports about some tension between the two, but I think at the end of the day, going back to what I said before, the common denominator, meaning the understanding there is a need to end Hamas' ability to continue and to dictate its radical agenda. This is something that is kind of like bridging the gaps between the two, though there are still differences of opinions. It's also in the United States' interest to make sure that Hamas will not able to continue and dictate its radical and its Iranian masters' radical agenda on the region.
In your perspective, how involved should the United States be in this conflict?
I think the United States should be very much involved in this conflict, and I think to a large extent it has indeed was involved in this conflict, because in the end of the day, as I said before, it's also part of the United States' strategic interest in the region, and one of the major interests is, of course, to restrain and confine the ability of the Mullah regime in Tehran to continue and to expand their aggression across the Middle East, because as part of that, we already see today the Mullah regime is holding the world hostage through the attacks of the Houthis on maritime shipping in the Red Sea. This is also, of course, something that is jeopardizing and damaging the United States' strategic interest in the Middle East. So I think that to a large extent, definitely the United States has to be very much into this game.
Avi, with an election season right now and getting ready for elections to come in the fall, where does this play into the geopolitical spectrum and the election season here in the U.S. right now? Where does this fall on the platform for a lot of folks?
Well, it does have a lot of connection because, as we all know, there is an inner pressure on President Biden from some circles within the Democratic Party and more the progressive ones to kind of like, bring to an end as fast as possible the war in Gaza Strip. So there is some sort of like an inner conflict vis-a-vis that issue, because Biden administration and President Biden was very clearly saying Hamas rule must come to an end. But on the other hand, if you are complying today with the demands of circles within the American Democratic Party that demands to end the war right now, the meaning of that is Hamas rule is not going to come to an end, and then there is a conflict. So obviously you can understand it impacts the inner political and campaign presidency in the United States.
Taking it to where we are, we're sitting in Salt Lake City, Utah. What were you doing in Utah here, and how do you view Utahns, whether they're Israelis living here in Utah or not, how do you view this state looking at the conflict as a whole? What have you heard from folks?
Our institute inside the Middle East has been engaged in a lot of lectures and briefings to audiences across the United States and in the world about the war and the whole situation. So right now we are in the midst of a very intense lecture tour. I'm almost more than 1 month into the States. One thing that is very clearly and coming across all the audiences that I have been meeting, including in Utah, is the deep need for people for real knowledge and real education. And they are very appreciative of this apolitical, non-partisan education that ITME, our institute, is offering them. It's very significant for people.
When you say the education, just to wrap up on this, what do you feel like people are missing? What are they consuming when they see coverage of all of this? And what are people failing to recognize as what's taking place in the Middle East?
People are missing context, nuance, understanding the ins and outs, who the players that are involved, what's the outcomes and the reactions, what's the cause and the outcomes. All those things that are very critical in the context of educational work that unfortunately has been to a large extent pushed aside in the age of narrative-based discussion. Those things, meaning critical thinking, nuance, understanding of the players involved, the chronology of events, those are things that are essential for the educational process. They are essential for also healthy functioning society. And we are, time and again, we are basically coming across audience that are very appreciative of the context and the nuance that we are offering them.
Where we stand today here in March, as you mentioned, the timeline of when this really got going, although the conflict's been going on for many, many years.
Right.
How are you looking at this right now in the magnitude of what's taking place in the Middle East in terms of the historical significance of these events?
This is a pivotal moment in many ways. One of the significant impact of that is in the context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And this is a point of time where basically we have to look very closely at the ripple effect, the aftershock waves that will be coming after that event. And one of the most significant things to follow is to see what will be the impact of that ripple effect, both in the inner Israeli as well as the inner Palestinian discussion. This is one thing. The other thing has to do with the context of the restructured geostrategic landscape of the Middle East. Once again, this conflict emphasizes the threat that the Iranian regime presents to the region, and I believe that that will further push Israeli-Arab rapprochement to block the Iranian threat. And one other thing that I think is enormously significant in the context of here, the discussion that we just mentioned, is in the context of the education and the need to bring back to the picture the real building blocks of education: critical thinking, media literacy, understanding the ins and outs of the whole story, being able to understand much better a complex reality.
Avi, thanks for coming in today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
So we'll continue monitoring this situation, of course, overseas as we learn those new developments, something that's been going on quite some time, as many of you know, and you've seen some of that coverage right here on 2 News Live. Stick with 2 News on air and online, KUTV.com, and by downloading the 2 News mobile app for those latest updates. So back here in Utah, the sun is shining in Salt Lake City tonight. It is a beautiful evening. Temperatures in the 60s. Woo! In northern Utah, too. And maybe we could say that in southern Utah, woo. But in northern Utah, on the last day of winter, right?
Yeah, beautiful.
That's
beautiful.
pretty cool.
And it's going to continue on.
This is finally over.
Yeah, this was a mess. We had 3 days of 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts finally coming to an end. We're talking about some of the warmest temperatures of the year here over the next few days. But, you know, it is March, and we're still seeing some active weather here, especially in the long-term forecast here, which we'll get to in just a moment. But yeah, it's been beautiful, and we continue to see a healthy snowpack from our last storm system, especially down towards the southern half of the state, picking up some good snow. And of course, that will translate to a lot of water here in the months ahead as we head towards those very hot summer months. But yeah, we're in really good shape for our rainfall for the month so far, seeing nearly an inch. And I think by the end of this month, we're certainly going to be probably at or maybe even above normal for this time of the year. So we'd love to see that. 63 degrees here in Salt Lake, a whole lot of sunshine out there, light winds, and yeah, it's plenty warm across the state. We're a good 5 to 10, even 13 degrees warmer from 24 hours ago. And temperatures here in the Logan area at 61 in Milford. We're at 61 in Delta. St. George, though, at a wonderful 70 degrees. And across the state tomorrow, plenty of sunshine. Maybe a light jacket will be needed early tomorrow morning, but you won't need it by the afternoon and evening. Here's that storm system, by the way, still down towards the south, giving some good soaking rain into portions of Arizona. You can see a whole lot of lightning associated with it. Finally pushing out towards the east as we get into the middle of the week. We're still dealing with sunshine, high pressure system overhead, but it moves away, and this will begin an active stretch of weather for us beginning Friday. A few isolated showers, snow showers for the mountains, better chance of precipitation for all of us across the state as we get into Saturday. Widespread mountain snow and valley rain. Then heading into Sunday, we continue on with valley rain and mountain snow, though the snow levels start to get a little bit lower. And then Sunday night into Monday could see some of that snow mixing into the valley floors. And then especially into Tuesday of next week, looking potentially even colder with some snow linger on. Still many days away. The specifics on the timing and the intensity is still unknown right now for the exact timing, but in general, we could see some good rain here in the days ahead as we get towards the weekend. About 1/4 of an inch, all the way up to 3/4, maybe even an inch of rain is expected for much of the state. So that'll be nice to see. Overnight lows, we're down into the 40s and 30s out there. Heber there a little bit cooler at 28 degrees. We'll see those high temperatures tomorrow climb into the 50s and 60s. Wonderful weather. And then once again down in St. George, it's going to be very warm, 70s, beautiful weather. Golf like conditions. A little bit breezy though heading into the weekend. We'll see some showers down there heading into Sunday. First day of spring tomorrow will feel like spring. 60s, we're above average all week long. There's that normal high right there, 56 degrees, and we're above that each and every day. Heading into the weekend, we'll be watching out for our next storm maker and then potential for a little bit of snow here along the Wasatch Front.
Something to be said about being above average. How nice. How nice.
Beautiful.
We'll take that.
We
Golf
deserve
weather regardless. I mean, you might
Yeah.
have the morning frost delay if it
Yeah.
gets any crazier here, but you get overnight lows in the 40s. That's great. You don't have to worry about
You
it.
go skiing in the morning, golfing in the afternoon. I need to do that.
Sean
one day.
Kelly's figured it out. We
I'm
just
gonna
need to
get it
commit
done.
to it.
I'm going to get it done.
All right. Thank you, Sean. Remember to download our 2 News weather app to know about the changes in your neighborhood. You can get updated forecasts, of course, that live radar on your phone. The app is not only handy, but it is free to download. Gotta love that. Golfing weather in St. George, but golfing weather in northern Utah. The changing of the tide
Yesterday
here.
felt really nice being outside.
Yeah, it's great. I think that it brings up the spirits, even if you do like the winters, even if you do ski.
Yeah, it's
right?
the sun, too.
It's a
The
mental
sun,
change
yeah.
here. I think it makes people a little bit happier. I've noticed everyone is pumped to be at the 2 News building here on a Monday because it's nice outside.
That's right.
All right, thanks for watching 2 News Live. We do this Monday through Friday, streaming live on Facebook, on YouTube. I've seen some of your comments already. I know you're weighing in on some of the topics that we've talked about today. Continue doing that, please, so we can do more of this. Have a great rest of your night. We're back tomorrow for 2 News Live at 5:30, and we might even take it on the road at the end of the week. We'll see you.